The call came at dusk while I was sorting medical supplies in a cramped clinic in Nairobi. After 35 years as a nurse, stitching wounds, holding hands through fevers, delivering babies under flickering lights, I thought I'd seen every kind of ending. But this one caught me off guard. My supervisor's voice crackled through the phone, calm but firm. Budget cuts, early retirement, effective immediately. I stood there, the humid air thick with a scent of antiseptic, and felt the ground shift beneath me. My life's work packed into a single sentence. I was 62. I'd given everything to this job, years of missed birthdays, holidays, and quiet moments with my son, Nathan. He was 38 now, a man with his own life, a brilliant environmental engineer in San Diego. We hadn't spoken much lately. My days were swallowed by clinics and crises, his by projects and deadlines. But I always pictured him out there, sketching designs to clean rivers. His dark eyes bright with purpose, the same way they'd lit up when he was a boy building model dams in the backyard. I missed that boy. I missed my son, so I decided to surprise him. No call, no warning. Just me, showing up at his door in Loyola, ready to see that crooked smile of his. I booked an overnight flight to San Diego, my hands trembling as I zipped my suitcase. In my coat pocket, I slipped the silver necklace my mother had given me before my first trip abroad. Its delicate chain, worn smooth by her fingers, carried her words, "Always come back to family, Eleanor." I'd kept that promise time and again, through war zones and monsoons. But this time felt different. Heavier. Somehow the flight was a long blur of engine hum and recycled air. I sat by the window, watching the stars fade into a thin line of dawn over the Pacific. My fingers traced the necklace, its cool metal grounding me as the plane dipped through turbulence. I imagined Nathan's face when I knocked on his door. Would he be at his drafting table, lost in blueprints? Or maybe asleep, his dark hair messy, like it was when he was 10. The thought carried me through the hours, through the restless shifting in my seat. I didn't know what I'd say when I saw him. Maybe just, "I'm home, kid." Maybe that would be enough. When the plane touched down in San Diego, the morning heat hit me like a wave. It was the kind of sticky warmth that clings to your skin, makes your clothes feel too tight. I stepped into the airport, my old canvas duffel slung over my shoulder, the necklace safe in my pocket. The taxi driver, a quiet man with graying temples, took my bag without a word. "Loyola," I said, giving him Nathan's address. As we pulled onto the freeway, the city unfolded around me, palm trees swaying against a cloudless sky. The ocean glinting in the distance. I tried to focus on the scenery, but a tightness settled in my chest. Like a warning I couldn't name. The cab wound through Nathan's neighborhood, past neat lawns and stucco houses. I'd only been here once, years ago, when he and Cassandra, his wife, had just moved in. They'd seemed happy then, her laughter bright, his arm around her like she was his whole world. I'd trusted that, believed she'd be the one to keep him grounded while I was halfway across the globe. The cab slowed, and I leaned forward, eager for a glimpse of his house. But when we stopped, that tightness in my chest turned sharp. Something wasn't right. That lawn was overgrown, weeds choking the flower beds. The mailbox was stuffed, envelopes spilling out like they hadn't been touched in weeks. The windows were dark, curtains drawn tight against the sun. It didn't look like a home where life was happening. It looked forgotten. I paid the driver, my hands fumbling with the bills, and stepped out into the heat. The air smelled of salt and dust, and my heart was pounding now, louder than the hum of the cab as it pulled away. I gripped the strap of my duffel, the necklace, heavy in my pocket, and walked toward the door. I was about to knock when a voice called out, sharp and familiar, from across the street. "Eleanor, is that you?" It was Mr. Harold, Nathan's neighbor, a retired teacher who'd always waved when I visited. He stood by his mailbox, a garden hose in one hand, his face pale under the brim of his cap. He dropped the hose and hurried over, his steps uneven, You don't know, do you? He said, his voice low, almost a whisper. My fingers tightened around the necklace in my pocket. Know what, Harold? I asked, keeping my tone steady, even as my pulse raced. He looked down, then back at me. His eyes heavy with something I wasn't ready to hear. Mr. Harold's words hung in the air, heavy as the San Diego heat pressing against my skin. Nathan's been in the ICU, Eleanor. 3 weeks now. Took him by ambulance one night, lights flashing, the whole street awake. His voice cracked and he looked away, gripping the hose like it was anchoring him. Sai Tim Nang? I thought you knew. My breath caught, sharp and cold, like I'd been plunged into icy water. The necklace in my pocket felt heavier, its chain digging into my palm, and Cassandra. I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Harold's face tightened, his eyes flicking toward Nathan's house. She's been gone. In Los Angeles, posting pictures from some fancy gala. All over Instagram, smiling like nothing's wrong. The world seemed to tilt. I don't remember thanking Harold or picking up my duffel. My legs carried me to the curb where I hailed another cab, my hands shaking as I gave the driver the address for UC San Diego Medical Center. The ride was a blur of palm trees and traffic, the city's brightness mocking the dread pooling in my chest. Cassandra, the woman Nathan had loved, the one I'd trusted to care for him, was throwing a party while my son fought for his life. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Not yet. I clung to the hope that Harold was wrong, that there'd been a mistake. Nathan would be sitting up in bed, teasing me for showing up unannounced. He had to be. The hospital's glass doors slid open, and the sharp sting of disinfectant hit me, familiar from my years as a nurse. It was a smell I'd always associated with healing, with saving lives. Now it felt like a warning. At the reception desk, I gave Nathan's name, my voice barely above a whisper. The nurse's eyes softened with something like pity. I see you. 6th floor, room 604, she said, pointing to the elevators. My fingers closed around the necklace as I rode up, the metal warm from my grip. The hallway was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of monitors. Each sound a reminder of how fragile life could be. When I stepped into Nathan's room, the world stopped. My son lay there, his face pale as the hospital sheets, his body shrunken. Beneath a thin gown, tubes snaked from his arms, his chest, his nose, tethering him to machines that hummed and blinked. He didn't look like the man who'd sent me photos of his latest river project, his grin wide under a hard hat. He looked like a stranger, fragile and fading. A doctor turned from the monitor, her badge reading Dr. Alina Ruiz. You're Eleanor Hayes, she asked, her voice gentle but direct. I nodded, unable to speak. Your son has a severe congenital heart condition. It's advanced rapidly. If we'd caught it sooner, there might have been options. Surgery? Maybe. But now? She paused, her eyes meeting mine. He's got days, maybe hours. Days, hours? The words landed like blows, each one stealing my breath. I moved to Nathan's side, my hand trembling as I touched his. His skin was cold, the veins faint under my fingers. I'd held hands like this before, patients on the edge, families saying goodbye. But this was my boy, the one I'd rocked. Through fevers, taught to ride a bike, watched grow into a man who wanted to save the world. How had it come to this? Why didn't anyone call me? I whispered more to myself than to Dr. Ruiz. She hesitated. We tried. His wife, Cassandra, was listed as his emergency contact. She said she'd handle it. Cassandra. The name burned in my throat. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but then Nathan's eyelids fluttered. Those dark eyes, the ones that used to light up when he saw me, opened just a sliver. Mom, he whispered, his voice so faint I leaned closer to hear it. Sorry I didn't call. His words broke something in me, a dam I'd held together for years. No, honey, I said, squeezing his hand. I'm here now. I love you. His lips curved, the ghost of his old smile, And for a moment, I saw my boy again. The one who'd run to me after school, arms wide. Then the monitor's steady beep turned sharp. A single piercing note that filled the room. Nurses rushed in, their footsteps quick and sure. Dr. Ruiz guided me to the hall, her hand firm on my arm. "Stay here, Eleanor. Let us work." I stood frozen, the necklace clenched in my fist, listening to the chaos behind the door, the snap of gloves, the low commands, the thud of a defibrillator. I knew those sounds. I'd been on the other side of them, fighting to pull someone back. But this time, I was the one waiting, helpless, praying for a miracle that never came. Minutes later, the door opened. Dr. Ruiz stepped out, her face heavy with the truth before she spoke. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor. We did everything we could." The words were a knife, clean and final. Nathan was gone. My boy, my reason for coming. Home was gone. I don't know how long I stood there, the hospital's hum fading to nothing. The necklace in my hand felt like the only real thing left, its chain cutting into my skin. I'd come back to family, just like my mother had said. But I was too late. I drove back to Nathan's house in a daze, the city lights blurring through the cab's window. The necklace was still in my pocket, a silent reminder of the promise I'd failed to keep. When I stepped onto the porch, the air inside the house was stale, heavy with neglect. The living room was dim, curtains drawn, a faint layer of dust. On the coffee table, I sank onto the couch, my duffel at my feet, and tried to make sense of it all. Nathan was gone. Cassandra was in Los Angeles, living a life that didn't include him. And I was here alone. It's a house that felt like a ghost of the home I'd imagined. The silence in Nathan's house was suffocating. Like the air itself was holding its breath. I sat on his couch, the dim light filtering through the drawn curtains, casting shadows across the room. My duffel bag lay untouched at my feet, the silver necklace still clutched in my hand. Nathan was gone. The words looped in my mind, each one a fresh wound. But beneath the grief, something else was stirring hunger, sharp and unyielding. Cassandra, her name burned in my thoughts. Tied to Harold's words about her gala, her Instagram posts, her absence while my son lay dying, I needed answers. Needed to know how she could abandon him like that. I stood, my legs unsteady, and wandered through the house. The living room felt like a museum of neglect, empty wine glasses on the coffee table, their rims stained with lipstick, a thin layer of dust coating everything. In the kitchen, the sink was piled with unwashed plates, takeout containers spilling. Over the counter, a half-empty bottle of champagne sat by the fridge, its label screaming money Nathan would never have spent on something so frivolous. My fingers tightened around the necklace. This wasn't the home of a man who'd been cared for. This was a place left to rot. I moved to Nathan's office, a small room at the back of the house where he used to sketch his engineering designs. The desk was cluttered, pencils scattered, papers stacked haphazardly, a laptop half buried under a pile of unopened mail. I sank into his chair, the leather creaking under my weight, and opened the laptop. The screen flickered to life, and I hesitated, feeling like I was trespassing. But I had to know. I clicked into his email, my heart pounding as I scrolled through the inbox. Most were work-related, updates on river projects, invoices for supplies. Then I saw a string of bank notifications, alerts about large transactions, transfers, withdrawals. My stomach twisted as I opened the first one. The email was from Nathan's bank, confirming a transfer of $75,000 to an account I didn't recognize. The date was 3 weeks ago, the same day Harold said Nathan was rushed to the ICU. Another email 2 days later showed a charge of $120,000 for a charity gala event in Los Angeles. There were more $50,000 for a designer gown, $30,000 for a private jet to LA, $15,000 for a catering company specializing in luxury experiences. The amounts piled up, each one a stab to my chest. Nathan had always been careful with Money saving for his projects for a future he'd never get to see. This wasn't him. This was Cassandra. I leaned back, my hands trembling, and noticed a folder on the laptop labeled Personal. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. I didn't want to invade his privacy, but I needed to understand. I clicked, and a single email appeared, marked as unread, from a Dr. Michael Langston. The subject line read, "Urgent, Nathan's condition." My breath caught as I opened it. The email was dated 6 months ago. "Mr. Hayes, I strongly recommend immediate follow-up testing. For your heart condition, the symptoms you described, chest pain, fatigue, shortness of breath, are concerning. Delaying could be catastrophic. I've informed your wife as you requested. Please contact me to schedule." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the hum of the laptop. Nathan had been sick for months. He'd told Cassandra, and she'd known. The twist hit me like a physical blow. She hadn't just abandoned him in the hospital. She'd ignored his illness from the start, letting it fester while she spent his money on her own life. The email was proof, cold and undeniable, that she'd chosen herself over him long before the ICU. I printed it out, the paper shaking in my hands, and tucked it into my bag. This wasn't just betrayal. It was cruelty. I reached for my phone, my fingers fumbling as I pulled up Cassandra's number. I hadn't called her in over a year. Not since she'd brushed me off during a brief visit, her eyes glued to her phone, snapping selfies for her followers. I hit the video call button, my pulse racing. The screen lit up, and there she was, framed by glittering lights and the clink of glasses. Cassandra, 35, her blonde hair swept into an elegant updo. A champagne flute in her hand. Behind her, a crowd in black tie attire laughed and danced, the Los Angeles skyline sparkling through a ballroom window. Her gala, her charity event. "Eleanor," she said, her voice bright, almost mocking. "Wow, didn't expect to hear from you. What's up?" She tilted her head, her smile perfect, practiced. I took a breath, steadying myself. "Nathan's gone," I said, my voice flat, cutting through the music on her end. "He died this morning alone, while you were—" "What? Throwing a party?" Her smile faltered just for a second, then snapped back into place. "Oh, Eleanor, I'm so sorry," she said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "He'd been sick for a while. You know how it was, nothing I could do." I gripped the phone tighter, and the money, the transfers, the gown, the jet, the gala, all while he was dying. Her laugh was sharp, careless. "I'm his wife, Eleanor. What's his is mine. That's how it works." She took a sip of champagne, her eyes glinting. "You should come to one of my events sometime. Might do you some good." I stared at her, memorizing every detail, the diamond earrings, the smug tilt of her lips, the way she didn't even pretend to care. "Enjoy your party," I said quietly, and ended the call before she could respond. Her face lingered on the black screen, a ghost of everything I'd trusted and lost. I set the phone down, my hands steady now, the anger giving way to resolve. Cassandra thought she could take everything Nathan had built and walk away. She was wrong. I reached for my bag, pulling out the printed email from Dr. Langston. It was a weapon, one I'd used to protect my son's legacy. I thought of Clara Nguyen, a lawyer I'd worked with years ago on a medical aid project. She was sharp, relentless, and owed me a favor. I dialed her number, my voice calm but firm when she answered. "Clara, it's Eleanor. I need your help today." Within hours, I was in Clara's office in downtown San Diego, the city's skyline framed by her window. She listened as I laid out the emails, the bank statements, the proof of Cassandra's spending. When I showed her Dr. Langston's email, her eyes narrowed. "This changes everything," she said, her pen tapping the desk. "She knew he was sick and did nothing. We can use this." She started making calls, banks, accountants, a contact at Nathan's firm. By the end of the day, Nathan's accounts, were frozen, his credit cards canceled, and his remaining funds transferred to a holding account in my name. Clara looked at me, her expression steady. "This is just the start, Eleanor. She's not going to let this go quietly." I nodded, the necklace heavy in my pocket. I didn't care how loud Cassandra screamed. She'd taken enough from my son. Now I'd make sure she never touched another piece of him. As I left Clara's office, the sun was setting over San Diego, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. I felt the weight of Nathan's absence, but also the fire of purpose. This wasn't over. Not yet. The days after I left Clara's office blurred into a haze of paperwork and phone calls, each one a step toward reclaiming what was left of Nathan's life. I stayed in his house, sleeping on the couch because his bed felt too final, too empty. Every morning, I woke to the same stale air, the same scattered remnants of his world pencils on his desk. A coffee mug with his initials. The laptop still open to that damning email from Dr. Langston. It was proof Cassandra had known about Nathan's heart condition and done nothing, letting him slip away while she spent his money on her glittering life. That email was my anchor, my reason to keep moving forward when all I wanted was to curl up and grieve. Clara worked fast, pulling together evidence like a general preparing for battle. She had the bank statements, the email from Dr. Langston, screenshots of Cassandra's Instagram posts, her smiling in a sequined gown, toasting champagne at her charity gala while Nathan lay dying. Each post was a knife, her captions full of hashtags about giving back when really she'd been taking everything. Clara also found Nathan's will, tucked in a safe in his office, naming me as executor. It was a small relief, knowing he'd trusted me with what mattered. But it wasn't enough to fill the hole he'd left behind. The courthouse in San Diego was a looming building, all concrete and glass, cold despite the sun blazing outside. I sat at the petitioner's table, Clara beside me, her files neatly stacked, her face calm but fierce. Across the aisle, Cassandra sat with her lawyer, a slick man in a tailored suit who kept whispering in her ear. She wore a designer blazer, her blonde hair perfect, her expression a mix of boredom and defiance. I studied her, the way her fingers tapped her phone, the way she avoided my eyes. This was the woman I'd welcomed into our family, the one Nathan had loved so completely. And she'd betrayed him in every way that mattered. When the judge called the session to order, Clara stood, her voice steady as she laid out the timeline. Nathan's diagnosis, his weeks in the ICU, the absence of visitors. She presented the bank statements, each transaction a mark against Cassandra's $75,000 for the gala, $50,000 for a gown, $30,000 for a jet. Then came the email from Dr. Langston, projected on a screen for the courtroom to see. Immediate follow-up testing. Delaying could be catastrophic. A murmur rippled through the room, and I saw Cassandra shift in her seat, her face tightening. Clara didn't pause. She played a recorded testimony from Dr. Ruiz, Nathan's ICU doctor, her voice clear through the speakers. With timely intervention, Nathan Hayes could have lived another 6 months, maybe a year. His condition was manageable, but neglect accelerated his decline. I gripped the necklace in my pocket, its chain a lifeline as Clara's words sank in. Nathan could have had more time to call me, to laugh with me, to finish one more project. Cassandra had stolen that from him, from us. Clara ended with Cassandra's Instagram posts, her own words damning her. One caption read, "Living my best life for a cause," posted the day Nathan died. The courtroom was silent, the weight of her indifference hanging heavy. Cassandra's lawyer stood, his voice smooth as polished glass. He argued spousal rights, claiming the money was marital property, that my actions were an overreach, a grieving mother's vendetta. "Mrs. Hayes is distraught," he said, glancing at me with false pity. "But this is a family matter, not a crime." His words slid over me, meaningless. I wasn't here for pity. I was here for Nathan. The judge leaned forward, his eyes scanning the evidence spread across his bench. He asked Clara for the will, then Dr. Langston's email again. He read in silence, his face unreadable, while I held my breath. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but firm. Given the clear evidence of financial misuse, the deliberate neglect of Mr. Hayes' medical needs, and the documented intent to exploit his assets, this court orders all assets of Nathan Hayes frozen. Temporary control of the estate is granted to Eleanor Hayes. Cassandra Hayes is prohibited from accessing any property or funds until further notice. The gavel struck, sharp and final, echoing in my ears like a door slamming shut. Cassandra shot to her feet, her face flushed, her voice cutting through the courtroom. "You can't do this, Eleanor. This isn't over." Her lawyer tried to pull her back, but she shook him off, her eyes locked on mine, burning with rage. Two bailiffs stepped forward, guiding her toward the exit as she hurled one last glare at me. I didn't move, didn't flinch. I sat there, my hands folded, the necklace warm in my pocket. The victory was real, but it felt hollow. Nathan was still gone. No court order could bring him back. As the courtroom emptied, Clara touched my arm. "You did right by him," she said softly. I nodded, but my throat was too tight to answer. I walked out into the San Diego sun, the heat wrapping around me like a heavy coat. My phone buzzed, Cassandra's name on the screen, a voicemail already waiting. I played it, her voice sharp at first, full of threats. "You'll pay for this. Eleanor, you think you can take everything." By the second message, her tone had shifted, softer, almost pleading. "Let's talk, okay? I just need a little to cover some things. We can work this out." Not once did she say Nathan's name. I deleted the messages. The necklace steadying me as I slipped it back into my pocket. Back at Nathan's house, I stood in his office, the air still thick with dust and memory. The laptop was closed now, the bank statements filed away, the will safe in Clara's hands. I'd won, but the house felt emptier than ever. Nathan's pencils, his mug, his life, they were all here. But he wasn't. I sank into his chair, my fingers tracing the edge of the desk where he'd worked, dreamed, loved. The necklace lay heavy in my pocket, a reminder of my mother's. Words always come back to family. I'd come back, but I'd lost him anyway. The victory in court was for Nathan, but it wasn't enough. I needed to do more to make his life mean something beyond this fight. The days after the courtroom victory stretched long and quiet. The silence in Nathan's house heavier than ever. I'd won, kept Cassandra from taking what was left of his life, but the emptiness lingered. His pencils still sat on the desk, his coffee mug untouched, the air thick with the absence of his laughter. I spent mornings at the kitchen table, sorting through his estate papers. Each document a reminder of what he'd worked for, years of designing cleaner rivers, building a future he'd never see. The necklace in my pocket, my mother's silver chain, felt like the only thing tying me to something solid. I'd come home to family, but the family I'd hoped for was gone. One evening, the San Diego sun dipped low, painting the countertops in shades of gold. I knew I couldn't let Nathan's legacy sit frozen in bank accounts. His work, his heart, deserved more. I thought of my years as a nurse, of the patients I'd held through their final moments, the families I'd helped find peace. Nathan would have wanted that something good to come from his pain. I picked up the phone and called a contact at 8. UC San Diego Medical Center. A social worker I'd met during Nathan's time in the ICU. "I want to start a fund," I told her, my voice steady for the first time in weeks, "for heart patients who've been left behind, who can't afford care. In Nathan's name." The Nathan Hayes Fund came together faster than I expected. Within days, I had a lawyer drafting the paperwork, a small team of hospital staff offering to help. The money from Nathan's estate, everything Cassandra hadn't taken, would go to covering treatments, medications, support for those with no one else. It felt right, like a piece of Nathan was still out there, saving lives in his own way. but it wasn't until I visited the hospital to sign the final papers that I met her. Lily. She was 10 years old, small under the thin hospital blanket, her dark hair tucked under a faded knit cap. The nurse introduced us, her voice soft. Lily's been here for months. Congenital heart defect, like your son's. No family to care for her. Lily's eyes met mine, wide and tired, but there was a spark in them, a quiet strength that reminded me of Nathan when he was young, stubborn and full of dreams. I pulled a chair to her bedside, the necklace warm in my pocket. "Eleanor," I said, keeping my voice gentle, "I'm starting a fund to help kids like you." She tilted her head, her voice barely a whisper. "Will it mean someone stays with me?" Her words hit me deep, stirring the ache of Nathan's final days, alone in that sterile room. I reached for her hand, small and fragile in mine. "I'll stay," I said, and meant it. That day, I started the process to become Lily's guardian. The hospital staff helped, and within weeks, she was discharged to me. Nathan's house, once so hollow, began to change. Lily's laughter filled the corners, her footsteps a new rhythm against the hardwood. We painted the spare room together, her choice a bright green, like the lime trees she'd seen in a book. She held the paintbrush with careful focus, leaving uneven streaks I didn't bother to fix. This was her space now, her mark on a home that was becoming ours. In the backyard. We turned over a patch of earth, planting clematis flowers, their purple petals her favorite. Lily knelt in the dirt, her hands smudged, grinning like she'd discovered a secret. I watched her, and memories of Nathan flooded back him at her age, digging in the garden, his face lit with wonder. Evenings became our ritual. Lily would perch on a stool while I cooked, chopping carrots with the same concentration she'd given the paintbrush. She'd tell me stories about the hospital, the other kids, the dreams she had of seeing the ocean. We tried new recipes, her love for spicy tacos quickly becoming mine. One night, as we stirred salsa, she started humming, a soft tune Nathan used to sing when he worked on his projects. It's caught me off guard, a comfort and a pang all at once. Each night, tucked her into bed, the green walls glowing under the lamplight. I'd sit a moment watching her breathe. The necklace in my pocket, a quiet reminder of the family I'd lost and the one I was building. Love, I realized, didn't have to end with loss. It could grow, take new shapes, hold the past without letting it weigh you down. Lily was proof of that, her presence weaving into the spaces Nathan had left behind, not replacing him, but living alongside his memory. One afternoon, as the sun hung low over Loyola, Lily and I walked to the shoreline. The Gulf of California stretched before us, its waves rolling in with a steady, soothing rhythm. The air carried the scent of salt and seaweed, warm and alive. In my hands, I held a small wooden frame with a photo of Nathan, his smile wide, his hard hat tilted, taken on a river project years ago. Lily clutched a smooth purple stone she'd found in the garden, insisting it would keep the picture safe. We found a spot where the tide brushed the sand but didn't pull it away. I set the frame down, pressing it gently into the earth. Lily placed her stone beside it, her small fingers lingering on the photo's edge. We stood there, the waves speaking for us, their rhythm a kind of promise. I thought of the flight that had brought me here, the hope I'd carried, the loss I'd found. I hadn't expected this Lily, the fund, a home filled with new light. But standing there, her hands slipping into mine, I felt it. A warmth, a purpose, a family reborn. "You're my home now," Lily said, her voice soft but sure. I squeezed her hand, the necklace steady in my pocket, and knew she was right. Life, I've learned, doesn't stop at loss. Breaks you, yes, but it also builds you back piece by piece in ways you never expect. Nathan's life, his love, lives on in the fund, in Lily, in the home we're making, and that's enough. More than enough.